Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 2 2017 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic, it was a weird mix of events of how all the games I predicted went. Through the 1 o'clock games, I was 6-3, which I was very happy with. Through the 4 o'clock games, I ended up going 2-1 to get to 8-4 through the first 12 games. Then I struck out with the primetime games, and I went 0-3. I missed every single primetime game to drop my record to 8-7. So definitely a disappointing way to end the week after such a good start with a 6-3 start. But hey, it's the first week. You do a lot of feeling out with all your picks, and you see how teams are. I will say this about some of the teams. The Kansas City-New England game, I was very surprised by that. I thought the Chiefs, that was one of their most complete games they played in a while. Probably one of the most complete ones since they played the Patriots. Last time when they put up 42 points and beat the Chiefs 42-14 or 41-14. But I do believe what this showed was the Chiefs are better than what I thought, and they are definitely a contender in the AFC West. But for the Patriots and all their fans, the sky isn't falling. It's not the Chicken Little moment. The Patriots are still a good team. However, the one thing that you have to be concerned about is they can't generate a pass rush, and they really have no good linebacking elements. And Brandon Cooks, Philip Dorsett, and Chris Hogan, without Julian Edelman, are not as or Julian Edelman is not as replaceable as people originally thought. So I will give my credit to KC. Congrats on that one. In New England, everything's fine, and they should be able to start rebounding starting this week. Some other big takeaways I took from last week. I have been a huge Bruce Arians fan since he's come to Arizona in 2013. I just loved his attitude. I loved that he was a coach that he was blunt and direct in what he said, and he'll get straight to the point. But he also gave the players the respect to give their input and admit to his mistakes, and just be a good overall coach, of a coach that isn't too overbearing, but isn't too loose either. And I really enjoyed how he's been doing the last few years. The Bruce Arians, Carson Palmer era in Arizona, it's over. The Arizona Cardinals looked absolutely abysmal and awkward offensively. Carson Palmer threw 3 interceptions. One was a pick 6, and I just lost all confidence in the Cardinals trying to do anything. It's over. Carson Palmer at age 37, he's done. He'll play this year because they have Blaine Gabbert at backup. I would consider trying to get Colin Kaepernick as the starter, but Arizona's not going to do that, obviously. But they're not going to go to Blaine Gabbert, but it's over. It's time for Bruce to go. Let him go into retirement. Don't fire him. Let him go into retirement and see how that goes. But I just was incredibly disappointed in Arizona. And now with David Johnson being out 2 to 3 months, that just compacts things. And I do not expect the Arizona Cardinals, at best, they'll be a 500 team. At best, they'll be 500, but there's going to be another losing season. It'll be time for Arizona to move on. And the one last thing that I'll acknowledge here early before I go into all my other picks is give it up to the Los Angeles Rams. They looked like a competent football team. Sean McVay, just seeing how the offense ran was a very good choice. I loved how Goff was opening up the offense more. Robert Woods was making plays. Sammy Watkins looked okay in his debut. Not as many yards as I would expect, but that was decent. But it was a huge game for the third-round wide receiver Cooper Kupp from Eastern Washington University, the all-time FBS leader in receiving yards. What a game he had, and I think he will become, over time, either by the end of the year, if not the number 2 wide receiver, he may become the number 1 wide receiver on the Los Angeles Rams. And bravo for their defense as well. They played smothering defense. I know it was the Colts, and Scott Tolzien, but when you make that many plays, that deserves just credit on its own. So those are my thoughts on some of the early games, and I'll get more thoughts on the end there. To go over my record for last week against the spread and straight up, I went 8-7 on the lines I put in my video at the time, and those are the lines that I'm going to stick with for my videos. Though starting with this video, I will put my website that I found the against the spread line. So if you guys want to see how the lines are moving, and because of certain things of injuries or just certain momentum shifts, I'll leave that site there just so you can see updated lines. But yeah, so I'll do that just so people don't feel as confused, and they can stay more updated on lines by the end of the week. Alright, so time for my picks. Alright, so this Thursday, when the 0-1 Houston Texans go to the 0-1 Cincinnati Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals are 5-point favorites in this game. I like Cincinnati here, -5, and Cincinnati straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Cleveland Browns go to the 1-0 Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens here are 7.5-point favorites in this game. I like Cleveland here, +7.5, but Baltimore straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Buffalo Bills go to the 1-0 Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are 7-point favorites in this game. I like Buffalo here, +7, but Carolina straight up. Then the next game, the 0-1 Arizona Cardinals will go to the 0-1 Indianapolis Colts. The Arizona Cardinals are 7.5-point favorites in this game. I like Arizona here, -7.5, and Arizona straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Tennessee Titans go to the AFC South leading 1-0 Jacksonville Jaguars. I can't believe I just said that, but yes, the Jaguars are leading the AFC South. The Tennessee Titans are 1.5-point favorites in this game. I like Tennessee here, -1.5, and Tennessee straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Philadelphia Eagles go to the 1-0 Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs here are 4.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take Philadelphia here, +4.5, but I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 New England Patriots go to the 0-1 New Orleans Saints, the New England Patriots are 6.5-point favorites in this game, and I like New England here, -6.5, and New England straight up. Next game, when the 1-0 Minnesota Vikings go to the 1-0 Pittsburgh Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers here are 7-point favorites in this game. I like Pittsburgh here, -7, and Pittsburgh straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Chicago Bears take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their first game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 6-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay here, -6, and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the Miami Dolphins make their season debut against the 0-1 Los Angeles Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game. I like the Los Angeles Chargers here, -3, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 New York Jets go to the 1-0 Oakland Raiders, the Oakland Raiders are 13.5-point favorites in this game. One of the 2 double-digit spreads of the week so far. I am going to take the points here. I think it's too big, so I'm going to take the New York Jets here, +13.5, but the Oakland Raiders straight up. The next game, when the 1-0 Dallas Cowboys go to the 1-0 Denver Broncos, the Dallas Cowboys are 1.5-point favorites in this game. I like Dallas here, -1.5, and Dallas straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Washington Redskins go to the 1-0 Los Angeles Rams, the LA Rams are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like the LA Rams here, -2.5, and the LA Rams straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 San Francisco 49ers go to the 0-1 Seattle Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks here are 13-point favorites in this game. I like Seattle here, -13, but San Francisco straight up. And then for the Sunday night game, when the 1-0 Green Bay Packers go to the 1-0 Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons here are favored by 2.5 points in this game. I like Atlanta here, -2.5, and Atlanta straight up. And then the Monday night game, when the 1-0 Detroit Lions go to the 0-1 New York Giants at MetLife Stadium, the Detroit Lions are 5-point underdogs in this game. I like Detroit here, +5, and the Detroit Lions straight up. Alright, so time for my thoughts on each game. The Houston Texans going to the Cincinnati Bengals. I have to tell you, both of these offenses all around were absolute disasters. Houston, Tom Savage looked so bad, and some of that is on him. But when your offensive line gives up 10 sacks, which is the most the Houston Texans have given up in a single game, and also it was the first time that the Houston Texans had given up 6 sacks and a half. The only other time was their second game in franchise history when David Carr at the time got sacked 6 times in one of their halves. So that shows you how rare and how rarely this offensive line plays this bad. Also, for Leonard Fournette, for a team that has a very little defense, Leonard Fournette became the first running back to have a 100-yard rushing day on their first game since Thomas Jones did it for the New York Jets back in the 2009 season. And though for Tom Savage, I have to say this, Tom Savage, even with the offensive line pressure, and Dwayne Brown just made probably about another $2 to $4 million in his pocket because the offensive line, without him at the left tackle, looks like a complete sham. Tom Savage was not the answer. I never understood how Tom Savage was going to be the quarterback. I thought Deshaun Watson should have started from the beginning, and it looks like he's going to get his opportunity this Thursday. Though I feel bad for Savage in this way, I think it's wrong, and for the second time in 3 years, Bill O'Brien's done this. Remember back in 2015 when they played the Kansas City Chiefs in Houston? Brian Hoyer played bad enough that Bill O'Brien pulled him out for Ryan Mallett. Then he started Ryan Mallett the next game, and they ended up losing. And I kind of feel that same way about the Texans this time around. And I just think, again, if you really wanted to, let Tom Savage have an opportunity, he should have played at least two to 4 games at max, and just, try to see if he could salvage anything. But good luck to the, Deshaun Watson. I think over time he's going to prove to be a good quarterback, and I think Bill O'Brien needs him to be, because if he's not, Bill O'Brien will get canned and fired, which he will deserve to be fired. And then you look at Cincinnati, just kind of the same instance. The Bengals were the first team to get shut out at home in a season opener since 2006, and they were shut out themselves for the first time since 2009. And Andy Dalton threw a career high 4 picks, and he also had another turnover. So I believe this was a career high in turnovers with 5 turnovers. So for me, I look at this game and say this: the difference between the Texans and the Bengals was the Texans' offense really could not move anything at all. The Bengals' biggest problem is that they would make plays and get into, field goal territory or the red zone. They had about 2 or 3 red zone turnovers, which were the difference in the game. And just looking at the defenses, I'll give the Texans that they have a very talented and loaded Baltimore Raven type defensive line. However, I don't see the secondary with guys like Andre Hall, Kevin Johnson. They don't have A.J. Boye back there anymore, but they do have Jonathan Joseph, Kareem Jackson. I just don't see that type of secondary that Baltimore has that's a little more experienced and polished. So I feel like they should be able to at least score more points, or the Texans defenders won't take advantage of those opportunities that the Ravens were able to with their linebackers. And Bill O'Brien says that 5 players suffered a concussion in the game, and they're all ruled out basically. And Deshaun Watson even has an ankle injury. So if Tom Savage is having to play again, I have no confidence that the Texans should be able to win this game. I think for the Bengals, it could be weird because Andy Dalton has this very unimpressive track record in primetime TV. He is 5-11 in primetime games, and he actually has, in those games, lost to the Texans a couple times. Last year, even in Houston, Randy Bullock misses that field goal, and the Texans win, and Tom Savage was the quarterback for that game. So Tom Savage's only career win was against the Bengals. He's also lost to T.J. Yates, and Brian Hoyer over the last 2 times. So the Texans not having a great quarterback against the Bengals and the Texans somehow winning is not uncommon, but just seeing what the Bengals had and how they played, I just expect the Bengals offense to be more efficient and not cause as many turnovers against the Texans defense that has a loaded Ravens type front, but not nearly in the back end. So they'll be able to at least kick field goals, I think, if they get into those positions. Because I don't think the Texans defense will be able to capitalize on as many interceptions and turnovers that the Ravens did. I think it's going to be a weird game. It's going to be low scoring. Both defenses should, have decent games. But I'm going to trust the Bengals here. They're more talented, more experienced on offense. And telling Deshaun Watson, who's going to possibly play with a gimpy ankle, to go out there in 2 days and play, that's just too much for me. To not take Houston. So that's why I like Cincinnati -5 and Cincinnati straight up. Next game, Ravens over Browns. For the Baltimore Ravens, what a incredible defensive performance we had. It was our first shutout since Week 11 of the 2009 season when we shut out Cleveland 16-0. And I was really impressed with our defense. It was ball hogging. It was suffocating. It was impenetrable at times. And it just was amazing that for a team that has always been able to put up yards on us, to shut them down the way we did, it was very impressive. However, the offensive struggles is still my main problem. The offense is this aspect of where we just need to do enough. It's kind of Ravens football. It's very rare we'll score 30 points, 35, maybe even 28. But if we can get 27 or 24, 27 points in 20 at the low end, I think this defense should be able to do enough for us to win games. Joe Flacco actually had the lowest amount of completions in a win for his career. He only went 9-17 for the game and had like 170 yards. Danny Woodhead, what a waste of money that we had there. He was basically our number one receiver on one drive, and then he pulled his hamstring, and now we don't know if or when he'll be able to come back. I do believe he'll play again later this year, but I do not expect him to. I do expect him to be gone for a decent amount of time. And Terrence West had about 80 yards rushing. That's a decent game. I just wish our line was a little bit better and he could, have more a little bit of explosive runs. But if we get 80 yards on, 20, 21 carries, who am I to complain? And then, we're playing a Cleveland team that, for the most part, played much better than I thought they would. I thought Deshaun Kaiser was decent. I believe he went 20 of 30 or 20 of 32 for 222 yards, 1 TD and 1 interception. Then he had another 5 rushes for 18 yards and another touchdown. I'm going to congratulate Derek Kindred for getting his first career interception on Big Ben Roethlisberger. And I just thought Cleveland, they just looked more competent. They looked more efficient. Kenny Bird had a big drop in the game, which could have been a huge difference maker for the game. But the way I see this, I'm going with Baltimore just because I feel like we have better defensive talent and we just have more experience. Just kind of like with Cincinnati, kind of do a different scale. I think we have more of a talented defense. Myles Garrett's likely not going to play this weekend, which is significant. And also just the history of this series over the years. The Baltimore Ravens have won 16 of the last 18 games against the Browns. So I'm going to give the Browns their points because I feel like they did well enough to basically, it's kind of like the same circumstance, even though it may be closer this time because Baltimore doesn't have nearly the offensive firepower that Cleveland does. But it's kind of the same idea where Baltimore showed enough defensive talent and we have enough offensive talent that at home we should be able to pull this out in a close, gritty, nail-biting type of game. So that's why I like Baltimore here straight up, and I'm going to take Cleveland with the points plus 7.5. The next game, the Panthers over the Bills. I do want to congratulate Buffalo. Sean McDermott actually became the first Buffalo Bills head coach to win his first game as the Bills head coach. They've had 10 coaches before, and they were all 0-10 before Sean McDermott, well, in the Super Bowl era. Sean McDermott was the first Buffalo coach in the Super Bowl era to win his debut game. The other 10 coaches that did that before never won their first game. And you know what? When you look at how the Bills played, they played decently. They were the better team. LaShawn McCoy had 110 yards rushing, but then I think he pulled his hamstring, and they basically had a precaution. They took him out the rest of the game. And then Mike Tolbert had a nice 45-yard game. Jordan Matthews had 61 yards. And it was just an all-around decent, solid game against a Jet team that nobody was surprised the Bills won. But they played decent enough where you're like, hey, you know what? the Bills did their job. And Tyrod Taylor now is 2-0 in his Buffalo home games to start the season. So good for him. Where for the Carolina Panthers, it was a much more balanced game. They had the most rushing attempts out of anybody last week with 38 attempts. Christian McCaffrey had 18 touches for 85 combined yards. Jonathan Stewart had a decent, solid game. Kelvin Shepard had a big 40-yard touchdown after Reuben Foster went down, their middle linebacker, which was significant. And I just thought the Carolina Panthers did their job, and I really overestimated the San Francisco 49ers. Not in the sense that I thought that they were going to win. I just thought they were going to look more competitive and not like the Colts or the Texans and look that bad offensively, especially with the talent they had. Though I'll give Pierre Garçon his credit. He did have 80 yards. That really didn't mean anything because they couldn't score, but he at least played decent enough to say, hey, he did his job the best he could. So when I look at this game, I trust Carolina's personnel. I think Carolina, they have the better running backs. They have the better offensive line. They have the more experienced quarterback. They definitely have the better wide receivers, tight end. And I believe with the front sevens, Carolina is going to provide a lot more pressure on the Bills' offensive line than the Jets could. And I'll trust Buffalo's corners with James Bradbury, and I'm drawing a blank with the other corner. I have enough confidence in them, seeing what they did against San Francisco, that they can do the same thing against the Buffalo wide receivers, which right now consist of Zay Jones and Jordan Matthews. But I'm taking Buffalo's points, though, just because I feel that Buffalo, they may surprise people. I remember a few years ago, I think it was E.J. Manuel's second game, they were able to go in, the Panthers went into Buffalo and pulled off, a big come-from-behind win. I don't think they're going to win, but something tells me the Buffalo Bills, they'll be a bit more competitive than the Niners just because they seem a little more offensively competent. And also, Sean McDermott was the former defensive coordinator for the Panthers for 5 years, so obviously he knows this team and he knows this roster, especially on the defensive side, and I think he'll produce a game plan competent enough for Tyrod to execute it to make the game close. But I'm going to take the Panthers' talent here and their home is the biggest reasons why I expect the Carolina Panthers to win this game. So that's why I'm taking Carolina straight up, but Buffalo +7. The next game, Cardinals at Colts. Like I said in the early part of my video, the Arizona Cardinals, I've lost all confidence in them. I will tell you the truth, I thought that they could possibly be the 6th seed in the NFC. That is nowhere near going to happen. It was just sad because for 70% of that game, the Cardinals and the Lions, their defenses were just dominating the game. Both offenses really couldn't do anything. Carson Palmer gets picked off, but then on the very next play, Matt Stafford, after Golden Tate gets blown up, gets intercepted by Justin Bethel for an 86-yard touchdown pick 6. And I thought the Cardinals maybe were in business, but then Palmer throws another interception to Glover Quinn, and then there comes the point where David Johnson, he throws a beautiful pass to David Johnson, who's surrounded by 3 lines, and he gets whacked and breaks his wrist, and now he's out for 2 to 3 months. And that's huge because David Johnson last year was 36% of Arizona's offense, which was the highest percentage for a player in the NFL last year, and he took the most snaps at running back. I believe 85% of snaps at running back was for what David Johnson was used for. And he is now out, and that's going to be a huge blow for the Cardinals. Also, Carson Palmer threw a career-high 3 interceptions in his first game of the season. He had never done that before. And it's also the first time the Cardinals had lost to the Lions in 7 games. And as frustrated as I am with Arizona, the fact and reality is now that Arizona at best could be a 500 team. I am taking them just because of how bad the Indianapolis Colts were. It was the most points given up by Indy since Week 14 of the 2015 season, when they gave up 51 points to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I believe, and a 51-16 loss. Scott Tolzien became the first QB to have 2 pick sixes in the same game since Tony Romo did it back in the Thanksgiving, Week 12 of 2015. And also the first player since Jameis Winston to have his first pass of the season go for a pick 6. And when I saw that, I knew my Colts pick was toast. Because if you throw up a pick six your first play, your confidence is basically shot. And it's going to take a lot to get it back if it ever comes back. And I am hoping that Jacoby Brissett will start. Because I believe Jacoby Brissett is better than Scott Tolzien. Though, at the end of the day, with the talent that the Colts have right now, and it's really something that, and a shout out to my friend Michael Deutsch, poet. He is a huge Colts fan. He's told me about Andrew Luck and the value of Andrew Luck. Seeing that now Andrew Luck and he's going to be out this game against the Cardinals as well. Seeing that, and firsthand, I have a much deeper respect for Andrew Luck, and I truly believe this. He is the most crucial asset in the NFL to his team. The Indianapolis Colts made the New York Jets and the San Francisco 49ers and even the Texans look more competent than the Indianapolis Colts did. The Indianapolis Colts did not even deserve to be on an NFL field on Sunday just because that's how bad they played. And that's why I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals to win this game. It's frustrating because I am so disgusted by them. They had one shot to give me a first impression, and they failed miserably. But my head's just telling me, even if Jacoby Brissett plays, and he'll play better than Scott Tolzien, the Colts just don't have enough talent, or any talent, I feel like, confident enough that they'll be able to make any plays against this Cardinal defense. Carson Palmer may be able to throw maybe 2 interceptions. I don't think this Colts offense can capitalize against that Cardinal defense. It's going to be a weird game. It's going to be a possibly over-excitable or overly competitive game than it should be. But I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals here. Just way too much more talented in most ways. I don't care if they had David Johnson or Larry Fitzgerald. Heck, David Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald could both be out this game. I still probably might take Arizona to win this game just because of how inept the entire Colts team is. So that's why I like Arizona here. Minus 7.5. And Arizona straight up. Next game, Eagles at Chiefs. Let me give the Philadelphia Eagles a lot of credit in this regard. I thought the Philadelphia Eagles played one of the more solid, consistent games of the weekend. The Eagles had, let's see, I'm trying to get my numbers here. The Eagles had Nelson Aguilar go for a career high in yards. He had 86 yards, which is good for him. And also, it was their first win in Washington since 2013. And Carson Wentz had over 300 yards passing in a very solid performance. I also thought the defense was great. They caused 3 fumbles and an interception. They caused 4 turnovers on the Redskins, which contributed to a significant amount of points. However, I do feel bad for their kicker, Caleb Sturgis, who apparently pulled his quad, I guess when he was kicking. I think there was that one play where I think some player hit his foot. I guess that caused the strain, and he's now out for at least 4 games. And so the Eagles now need to find a new kicker. However, I feel bad for Caleb Sturgis, the person. Caleb Sturgis, the player, I'm not really that high on him. So if they can find a better kicker that can have a little bit more distance, or a Dan Carpenter, or some kicker like that, I might actually put Dan Carpenter in as the permanent kicker and let Caleb Sturgis walk. I'm just not a big fan of his. I think he's the 11th worst kicker in the NFL because the other guys I thought of, I would take over him. But good luck to Caleb Sturgis. Personally, I hope he gets better real soon. Whereas the Kansas City Chiefs, they put on the shocker of the week and showed that it's a brand new year and that anything is possible. When you look at what the Chiefs did, here are some interesting numbers. The Kansas City Chiefs, Alex Smith had 2 75-plus yard touchdowns in that game. Going into the game, through his entire career, Alex Smith only had 2 75-plus yard touchdowns in his career. He had 2 on Thursday. Tyreek Hill broke an NFL record for his 6th straight game with a 65-plus yard touchdown pass. Number 3, Alex Smith. Amazingly, this is kind of amazing. I know it's only 2 games, but it's true. Tom Brady has never beaten Alex Smith. In 2014 And, on Thursday, those are the only 2 times Alex Smith and Tom Brady have met on teams, and Alex Smith won both occasions. In the regular season, of course, New England beat them in 2015 in the postseason. And Kareem Hunt, the 3rd-round running back from Toledo, had a phenomenal game. He set the NFL record up for the most scrimmage yards in a debut game with 256 yards from scrimmage. 256 yards from scrimmage. It was incredibly impressive, and they have found their new bell cow type running back, who I expect for the Chiefs to have a David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell type effect on game plans, that they're going to give him the ball as many times as possible. But the fun thing about the Chiefs is they have depth, so they're not going to wear him out play after play after play after play. And Kansas City, and one of the biggest reasons why I'm taking Kansas City is their home field advantage. In 30 games that Alex Smith has played at Arrowhead, they're 21-9. Philadelphia lost to the Chiefs last time in a pretty decisive way in Philadelphia. This time with KC, I think one advantage that Philadelphia may have is that Kansas City may be feeling themselves. They've had over a week to just enjoy and relax and enjoy the fact that they beat the Super Bowl champs on their 5th ring night. And they've been the talk of the NFL as one of the surprising teams that could be on a deep run. So if they're overconfident, Philadelphia may be able to take advantage of that and play more competitively. But I just feel like with KC, they lost Eric Berry for the year with a torn Achilles. But at the same time, Ronald Darby, the Philadelphia's corner, is now out 4 to 6 weeks with a dislocated ankle. So you take out 2 phenomenal defenders, Philadelphia's best corner, and Kansas City's best defensive player, top 2. So that cancels out. And just looking at that all around, if you go with the quarterback, I'll take Alex Smith over Carson Wentz at this point. If you look at the offensive lines, I'll give that to Philadelphia. But if you go running game, you go with KC. The front sevens, I'll give to Philadelphia, but I'll give the secondaries to Kansas City. So when you kind of have these even matchups where, the wide receivers go this way, but the tight end goes KC's way, you just kind of go to home field advantage, and just knowing how pumped up the Chiefs are going to be and their fan base is going to be to have their first home game and to build off the Patriot game, I just think that's going to be too much for a Philadelphia team last year that only won 1 road game. Just like they did last year. Just like they did this year, like last year. They won their first road game against but then they lost their next 7. I don't think the Eagles are going to lose their next 7 road games, but I think in this environment, in this situation, I think the Chiefs are going to be rested. It's his former team, and it's his former offensive coordinator, and I just think that the Chiefs should be able to do enough for the mentor to beat the student in terms of Reed versus Peterson. But I'm going to take Philadelphia plus 4.5 because of that overconfidence. I do think that could come into play, and they may let the Eagles stay in this game long enough that it comes down to maybe a field goal or a game-winning touchdown that puts it up like 31, 28, 24, something like that. So that's why I like Philadelphia plus 4.5, but Kansas City straight up. Next game, Patriots at Saints. The New England Patriots, all right, let me give you some numbers to show you how rare this New England Patriots loss was. First of all, the 42 points given up by a Bill Belichick defense ties the most points given up by a New England team in the Belichick era. Bill Belichick has coached 307 games at this point. That's incredible. For the first time in 87 games, the New England Patriots lost to a team at home since they had a halftime lead. And what's even more impressive and shocking is that for the first time in Tom Brady's career, he was 105-0 in home games in his career, going into a game where the Patriots had a fourth quarter lead. They blew the fourth quarter lead, and they ended up losing the game. So just to point that in, just rarity, 105-0 in the fourth quarter of a home game in which they were leading. First loss on Thursday. And I believe out of the last 56 AFC home games, this is only the 3rd time that an AFC team has been able to go into New England and win the game. And also, this is Tom Brady's first AFC home loss in a game that he started completely since, I believe, Week 10 of 2006 when they played the Miami Dolphins. Sorry, guys, on my nose. Just a little scratcher on my nose. So that's how rare what happened on Thursday was. But if you really think about it, they really hyped up themselves in a way that's very un-New England-like. They put the score up on the stands. They had Mark Wahlberg talking out there, which I didn't understand because Mark Wahlberg actually left the game before it ended. They had the fifth ring. They brought out Julian Edelman. It was all this pomp and circumstance, and I'm like, this is not how New England does things. That's a Dallas thing. That's a Miami thing. That's not a New England thing. But fortunately for the Patriots, for any rough time offensive game, or you get to play the New Orleans Saints, who somehow, and I'm going to say this now, Sean Payton has become the offensive Jeff Fisher. Well, he's become the offensive Rex Ryan in terms of game plan, where I can trust Sean Payton almost 100% of the time on offensive game plans. He will be able to score points 99% of the time. Defensively, he's a liability, and he doesn't know what his coordinators, or his players are doing on defense. He has become the offensive Jeff Fisher in the terms of this is Sean Payton's 4th consecutive year where I believe he will have a losing record. This is just like Jeff Fisher, who with the St. Louis Rams in this order, they went 7-8-1, 7-9, 6-10, and 7-9 in 4 straight years, and then you kept going. I know that Sean Payton is a better overall coach than Jeff Fisher. He's done more. He's won more. But it's just ridiculous because besides Bill Belichick and maybe Mike McCarthy, there is no coach in the NFL that deserves to have his job after 3 straight losing seasons, probably 4. That is just ridiculous. Sean Payton is just now, because the mindset isn't working. It's not getting to the players, and it's just a waste of time to waste Drew Brees and Sean Payton's time in the city of New Orleans, where they're just going to keep losing. The Saints, I'm sorry, fans, they've become the Aints again. I don't really care if Drew Brees throws for 5,000 yards again. Do you want a cookie for that? Yay. You know what? I would much rather have Drew Brees throw for 3,800 yards and get 10 to 11 wins instead of bragging about a bunch of hollow numbers of yards that didn't translate to wins. And by the way, if you want to keep harassing the defense, saying it's not Drew Brees' fault. Well, I also have another little number for you. They've had 16 games over the last 2 years where it's been a 1-score game. 9 of those times, Drew Brees had the football. Drew Brees couldn't get it done 9 of those times. That's not on the defense. If Drew Brees, is still this high-level quarterback, he closes some of those deals. He doesn't give you 9 losses in a situation where they could win the game. So, that's all I'm saying. But going back to this game, I do expect the Saints' offense, though, to be better. But if the Patriots needed a, wake-up call, motivation call, this is the best defense to play. Because they let Sam Bradford have 6 plays of 15-plus yards. Sam Bradford, I think, nearly threw for a career high in yards. There were plays where Adam Thielen was running wide open in the middle of the field. That should not happen. And if Adam Thielen can do that, I definitely can expect Brandon Cooks, who will be getting to play his former team, Chris Hogan, and Philip Dorsett to be able to make plays like that. So that's why I like New England here. Minus 6.5, and New England straight up. The next game, Minnesota at Pittsburgh. What a great segue there. The Minnesota Vikings had one of the weirdest offensive performances I've seen in a very long time from their offense. Dalvin Cook broke Adrian Peterson's rookie debut rushing record with 127 yards. The old record was 107 by Adrian Peterson, so that must have felt good for Vikings fans, or a little disheartening or cool for Dalvin that he gets to break the guy that used to be there in the building with him watching. And then also for Sam Bradford, he had a phenomenal game. I just talked about the completions, but then you also have the moments of Sam Bradford became the first Minnesota Vikings quarterback since Tommy Kramer to throw for 300-plus yards and three TDs in the season opener. Adam Thielen, with his numbers, he had the second most yards in a season opener since 1980, when wide receiver Ahmad Rashad had, I believe, 151 yards. So this Vikings team in defense, they only allowed Drew Brees to get one touchdown, but that was in garbage time. So this Vikings team was a very impressive all-around team. It looked like the team that was last year through the first 5 games. However, they're playing a Pittsburgh team that not only has a better defense than the Saints, they have a better offense and more loaded offense. I do want to congratulate T.J. Watt. He became the first player in 30 years to have 2 sacks and an interception in the same game. He's the first Steeler to have a game such of that since LaMarr Woodley did it in 2010. And to put that in perspective, J.J. Watt's played, I believe, 93 or 94 games. He only has 1 career interception in the regular season. And you know what? This thing with the Steelers and the Browns, it was routine for the Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger now, and here's a great stat, Ben Roethlisberger has won more games in Cleveland, Ohio in his career than the Browns have won as in any single season since they've been back in the NFL in 1999. Yes, let me repeat that. Ben Roethlisberger's won 11 games. The Browns in the last nearly 20 years have never won 11 games since then. So that shows you how dominant Ben Roethlisberger's been against the Cleveland Browns. And Antonio Brown had another monster game. He had his 14th game since 2013 with 10-plus receptions, and he's the first wide receiver in Pittsburgh Steelers history to start a regular season with a 10-reception game. Le'Veon Bell, I was very underwhelmed by. He only had, I believe, 6 carries for 39 yards, and if the Steelers want to have a better chance of winning their game, he needs to run more effectively, maybe get more carries, but run more effectively, because I don't think if they can shut him down on the ground, I will trust Minnesota's secondary to play decently enough against the Pittsburgh Wild it'll make it close. But I'm taking Pittsburgh here just because, like I said, I trust the defense. It's better than New Orleans, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have more talented offensive weapons around them than the Saints do. The Saints have the better quarterback, but the Steelers have more talent around the offense that will give the Vikings a much more of a challenge to go against. So that's why I like Pittsburgh here -7 and Pittsburgh straight up. Next game, Chicago at Tampa. I'm taking Tampa here just because it's kind of like one of those ideas where Tampa just has more talent. Tampa's like a Atlanta light, if you will. They may have actually some more decent offensive pieces, but I don't think they have the defensive pieces. But I'll give Chicago their credit. They played a decent game. Tariq Cohen, the third or fourth round running back from North Carolina A&T, had a great game. He had 8 receptions for 47 yards and 5 rushes for 66 yards with a touchdown. And one thing that was incredibly impressive, they were able to somehow shut down Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman. Devontae Freeman only ran for 37 yards and had a touchdown, and Julio Jones only had 6 receptions for 66 yards. I don't know how the Bears did that, but they did. So that's incredibly impressive, and kudos to John Fox and that defensive staff to making that game that close. However, I think one of the biggest things that happened is last Sunday was Kevin White, their wide receiver, went down with a broken collarbone, and he is now out for the year. And just with that being said, I just don't have confidence that if you're having Marquise Wilson, Tariq Cohen make some plays, I forget their one tight end's name, but I really can't name you that many wide receivers on the Bears. Marcus Wheaton was hurt, Kendall Wright. If you're having Mike Glennon throw to those guys, I just don't see how you can win a game offensively and be that effective offensively. And especially with Tampa's run defense, I expect to be better. So I don't see Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard being able to do enough by themselves to be able to pull this one out for the Bears. Could the Bears surprise me and make it competitive? Sure. But just kind of with Tampa, they're rested, they're motivated, and also my prayers and thoughts, and I wish the entire state of Florida, especially around the Tampa Bay, Jacksonville area, Miami, all the best from your recovery from Hurricane Irma. And now it's going up as a tropical storm, and now it's going through Georgia and Mississippi. And prayers and good luck, and please be safe out in this storm for everybody out there that's affected. But I'm going to take Tampa here. I think that motivation should play a factor into it. And I just think Tampa Bay, just top to bottom, are just a more clearly talented and more effective team. So that's why I like Tampa Bay here, -6, and Tampa Bay straight up. Next game, the Dolphins at the Chargers. This was really hard for me because I am disgusted by the Los Angeles Chargers. Hey, you know what? They moved from San Diego to Los Angeles. But you know what the Chargers brought with them? You should take out the HARG in their name and put OKE in place of it. They're not the Los Angeles Chargers, everybody. They're not. They're the Los Angeles Chokers. That was incredibly disappointing. Just even though, again, I know they were up 24. They were down 24-7 going into the fourth quarter. But they were able to get 2 huge turnovers. And then they got another big stop. And they were driving down the field. And for that offensive lineman to let Derek Shelby just literally stand and move 2 feet and lift his hand in the air to block the kick, that is an absolute disgrace for that to happen. And the reason why I call them the Los Angeles Chokers is this. This is not the first time the Chargers have done this. Over the last 3 seasons, the Los Angeles Chargers have played 26 games decided by 1 score or less. Do you know how many games the Chargers won out of those 26? 9. They're 9-17 in those situations. So this is something that the Chargers are showing you they will do. At 2 or 3 times in the year, or maybe more, this team has enough talent to put you in competitive games, but they will always break your heart based off their own stupidity or just based off one bad decision. And I will tell LA this now, forget the Los Angeles Chargers. Forget them. They're not important. They're playing at some random soccer center. They may have more talent right now, but the Los Angeles Rams, what I saw of them, watch them. They have more upside. Believe in them and watch them. Forget the Chargers. Let them, sit out at the StubHub Center and continue to choke away games and ruin your Sundays. Don't support the Chargers. Support the Rams. Okay? And so that's my thought on that. And I might be a little too emotional, but I do mean in all seriousness, if you want to support the better LA team, support the Rams. If you want to support the Chargers, that's great. But just expect this to keep happening, 4 times a year. The Chargers are going to be in a game that they're going to break your heart. And see, when you look at that, this is why it's so hard. I wish the Miami Dolphins would have played, because I would have liked to see them go against Tampa. But I don't know. And I'm going to give the Chargers this game just based off that. I don't know how the Dolphins are going to play. Would I be surprised if the Miami Dolphins win this game? Not at all. They're already out at Oxnard, California practicing. And I think they're going to be used to the time. They're going to get used to the weather. And also, the last time the Miami Dolphins were playing the Chargers, Phillip Rivers threw 4 interceptions, including 3 in the fourth quarter. So this is one of those games that I will tell you this. If the Miami Dolphins win, I'm not going to be surprised. And from what I just said, it wouldn't be a shock. The closer the game, I feel confident the other team's going to win with the LA Chargers. But I'm going to take the LA Chargers here just because I don't know how this Miami team is going to do. They haven't been in Miami for over 2 weeks. They may, be rusty. Their heads may not be in it, which I don't blame them because they're trying to figure out about their own, communities and families. But I'm going to take the LA Chargers here just because I've seen them play. If I had seen the Miami Dolphins play, and they played decently against Tampa, even if they didn't win, I'd probably take Miami to win this game. But since I haven't seen them play, I'm going to give the LA Chargers this win just based off the fault. But I would not be surprised if the Miami Dolphins won this game. And again, they're not the Los Angeles Chargers. In moments like this, they're the Los Angeles Chokers. 9-17 in 1-score games over the last 3 years. I'm just going to leave it at that. And Melvin Gordon and Keenan Allen have to play better. Melvin Gordon can't have just 50 yards, over 50 yards. Keenan Allen can't have 35 yards receiving. They have to play better than that. All right, so that's why I like the Los Angeles Chargers here +3 and the -3 and the LA Chargers straight up. Let's see. Cowboys over Broncos. Dak Prescott now has thrown the fewest interceptions in a 17 game stretch in NFL history. Ezekiel Elliott, for the 8th time, had 100+ rushing yards. That's tied with Shady McCoy for the most games in the last 2 seasons. And I congratulate Jason Witten for passing Michael Irvin on the all-time Dallas Cowboy receiving yard list. That's an incredible accomplishment, and that pretty much confirms why he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. The more surprising thing about Dallas, though, was their defense. For the first time since Week 7 of the 2013 season, Dallas held their opponent to under a touchdown, and this is the first time since the 1995 Cowboys, the last team that won the Super Bowl, that did not give up a touchdown on opening day. Ironically, they were playing the New York Giants, but that game was in New York. They are playing a Denver team that had a pretty decent defense, even though Von Miller didn't get home. Brandon Marshall was probably the best tackler. They were able to, have Benny Fowler have a decent game. He had 2 receiving touchdowns in the game. Going into the game, he only had 2 for his career. And Denver had a halftime lead, and it's kind of shown from last year. Denver was 8-0 when they had a halftime lead. They were 1-7 when they didn't. So I expect if Denver, can run the ball pretty well, they can control the clock and make throws. Thomas and Sanders have a good matchup on the outsides with the corners of Anthony Brown and Orlando Scandrick, who may not even play because he broke his hand. But I'm going to take the Cowboys here just because I expect if Dak Prescott can play as well as he did with Terrence Williams, Cole Beasley, and Dez Bryant against the Giants secondary, he can do basically the same against the Denver secondary. I do believe Denver's corners are better, but however, the Broncos, especially with Darian Stewart having a groin injury, they don't nearly have the same middle of the defense that they had before. They could put Bradley Roby in there, and that'll be decent. But if you only have him, I would feel much better if you had T.J. Ward back there or a healthy Darian Stewart. And I just feel, again, also, Denver had one of the worst run defenses, and unlike the Chargers' offensive line, I do expect the Cowboys' offensive line to create holes. And if Zeke can control that clock and pound the ball pretty well, they should be able to win this game. So that's why I like Dallas minus -1.5, and Dallas straight up. Next game, Redskins at Rams. The LA Rams, Sean McVay looked fantastic. I thought Sean McVay played a great game. Jared Goff was the first quarterback since Kurt Warner in 2001 to have 300+ yards and a few touchdowns to start a season. They had their biggest lead in halftime since Week 12 of the 2014 season when they shut out the Raiders, 52-0. Sammy Watkins looked decent. Robert Woods was contributing to the offense. Cooper Kupp had a great game. Like I mentioned before, I think he's going to become the number 2 wide receiver on the Rams by the end of the year, if not the number 1. You had Robert Quinn making plays. You had LaMarcus Joyner and Tremaine Johnson getting picks and making plays. And it just was an all-around impressive and solid performance by the Rams. And I'm sorry, he didn't throw 3 touchdowns. It was to have 300+ passing yards and a touchdown since Kurt Warner in 2001. And also, Sean McVay was the first coach since Scott Linehan to win his first game as Rams head coach. So good for him. And when you look at the LA Rams, I just saw some more competence compared to the Washington Redskins. The Redskins had 4 turnovers. Rob Kelly and Kirk Cousins were both tied in terms of leading rushing for their team. Chris Thompson really didn't do anything on the ground. He did most of his damage through the air. Jordan Reed's playing through a fractured foot and only had 4 receptions for 36 yards. And I just see this Rams team, they're going to get Aaron Donald back this week. And if you add him to that defense, that defense is going to kill the Redskins off, offense. And I don't see how this is going to go well for the Washington Redskins. It could be a more competitive game, and I do expect the Washington Redskins to be able to score more points because it is Kirk Cousins who can play and throw a football, unlike Scott Tolzien. But I just expect the Rams. They have more defensive talent. They're more well-talented and positioned, and they just have more of a confidence that I don't see the Redskins having for this season. So that's why I like the LA Rams minus 2.5 and the LA Rams straight up. San Francisco at Seattle. San Francisco, 3 points scored. Lowest amount of points scored since 1999, Steve Mariucci's second year. The offense looked pathetic. The offense looked, just lackluster. Carlos Hyde couldn't do really anything. Pierre Garçon had a decent game with 6 receptions for 88 yards, but that was it. Nobody else really contributed. And they're playing a Seattle team that is angry and irritated for the fact that they still can't win on the road. Seattle's lost now 8 straight games to Green Bay. The last time they won was November 1st, 1999. And in 8 of their last 9 road games, if you take out the game, and I made a mistake with the one comment about the last game when I said 7 of their 8 games last year. 7 or 8 games, they only scored 2 offensive touchdowns. Yeah. So now it's 8 out of 9. In 8 of their last 9 road games, the Seattle Seahawks offense has still scored only 2 touchdowns, and it's the second year in a row that on the road they started out the year not being able to score a touchdown. However, this is not in Green Bay, this is in Seattle, and if you look at Russell Wilson's record, it's night and day. Russell Wilson at home under Seattle was 34-6. On the road, they are 22-18-1, and this is a team that Russell Wilson, the Seahawks, have beaten 6 straight times. I think the San Francisco 49ers, they may be able to play a little bit better because it's very hard to play as bad as they did and try to not get better. However, I think just with Seattle's rage and anger being at home, they want to prove that, hey, we can, we may struggle against the good teams, but we'll handle our business against the below-average team like the Niners, like they should. So that's why I like Seattle here, minus 13, and Seattle straight up. Falcons over Packers. Jordy Nelson became the 4th Green Bay Packer wide receiver to have 500-plus receptions. I believe Donald Driver, Don Hudson, I forget the other one, so congrats to him. And the Seahawks defense did so well that it was only the second time in Rodgers' career that at home he had a touchdown and interception and a half with no points. But the reason why I'm going with Atlanta is a much better home team, especially with their offense at home. They averaged 30.5 points per game against the Packers in both the games in the regular season and the postseason. And kind of like with Green Bay, Seattle Green Bay, in this kind of game where you kind of have defensive aspects one way, quarterbacks one way, receivers one way, running backs, schemes, I'm going to go with the home team in this one. I just have more confidence in the home team with the Falcons over the Packers. It should be a great game. I'm happy it's Sunday Night Football, but I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons here just because in games like this where basically most things are the same, go with the home team. Just that's why I took Green Bay over Seattle. And finally, Lions over Giants. Matt Stafford at his 21st fourth quarter comeback of his career, which is the most since 2012. The Lions offense looked impressive. Kenny Galladay has become a good third receiver for the Detroit Lions. I just look at these two teams, and they're basically the same. Not really much of a running game. Offensive lines are in shambles, and both talented defenses. But the one thing I saw was the Detroit defense is more talented than the Cowboys. And I at least saw the Detroit Lions can move their offense. The Giants' offense only had 53 total yards in the first half and 233 total for the game. That can't work. Especially when the defense has only given up 3 offensive touchdowns in their last 3 games against Dallas. That can't work. And with a Lions defense that's motivated, I kind of expect the same kind of aspects to let the Lions win this game. Also, Stafford is 5-48 against winning teams. Fortunately, the Giants are a losing team, so you might feel more confident because of that. So those are my thoughts and picks on every game. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube prognosticators page. There's a lot of great people on there that do these picks just like I do. And that is it. So until next week, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Till then, so long.